Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the first day of Capitol Hill Ocean Week 2015 here on oceanslive.org. I am your host, Kate Thompson, for Capitol Hill Ocean Talk. Before we start this afternoon's panel, I wanted to give a special shout out to one of our pin sites at the Thunder Bay Great Lakes Maritime Heritage Center in Alpena, Michigan. Don't forget to be part of our conversation and tweet us questions at #CHOW2015. Climate change, global warming, the greenhouse effect. Whatever you call it, the Earth, and particularly our oceans, are affected by the headline-grabbing phenomenon. Today, we will explore a timely aspect of climate change resiliency and how Americans can be prepared to address the current effects of climate change on our economy, health, and the environment. In the studio today, I am joined by Dr. Holly Bamford, the Acting Assistant Secretary for Conservation and Management at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. In this role, Dr. Bamford works with Congress, other agency leaders, partner organizations, and local communities to develop policy and resiliency actions to ensure coastal and ocean stewardship. I also am joined by Dr. Lauren Alexander Augustine from Resilient America. Dr. Augustine serves as the Director on Program Risk, Resilience, and Extreme Events. She is also the Associate Executive Director for the Division on Earth and Life Sciences at the National Academy of Sciences. Previously, Dr. Augustine served as the Country Director in the National Academy's African Science Development Initiative. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today in studio.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
So, Holly, you're here again to talk about a wonderful topic called resiliency and how what we can do every day to affect the resilience of the communities that we have in the United States. But so how would you describe or characterize the current risk posed by climate change?
Climate change. You know, one word, and it would be impacts. You know, when we talk climate, a lot of people think it's 10, 20, 30 years. It's not going to be something for them to concern themselves with. But we disagree. We see climate impacts today. I mean, when you look at cities like Norfolk and Charleston, who on sunny days have streets that are flooding at high tide. That affects people's ability to get to work, to get to school, to get to local hospitals. So these impacts are happening now. And not only at the local level, but we're seeing them on a national scale. We saw in 2011 and 12, 25 total events, climate events, either drought, flooding, wildfires, coastal storms, that cost $1 billion each or more. We saw over 1,100 fatalities from those events across the country, and a total economic impact to our nation about $300 billion. So this is a concern. It's an impact that we're seeing now, and it's something that we really need to do something about because it's having an economic impact, a societal impact, and an environmental impact. And we can do something about it, and that's what Laura and I hope to talk about today, a little bit about how we can be more resilient to these risks.
Well, just for me, when Hurricane Sandy hit, I mean, it was a lot of rain. We were supposed to get a lot worse, but we were able to bypass what we're supposed to get.
Right.
But, you know, it did impact me. It impacted my family. So what can I do at my level, all the way up to the governmental and changing policy level to ensure that we have resiliency in our nation?
Right. Roundtables.
Well, there's a lot that you can do. So at the Resilient America program at the National Academy of Sciences, we really try to bring the science of resilience. So not the panic, not just the emergency management sides of it, but the people, the experts, the methods, the analytics, right, that go behind it to understand, you know, what are the roles and responsibilities, right? There's some personal responsibility. Like you said, you were affected, your family was affected, that's your responsibility. All the way up to the federal government, which has a separate set of roles and responsibilities. So when it comes to resilience, it's not just about responding to something, it's also about, you know, how prepared are you? How much do you understand what the risks are? And what are you prepared to do in face of those risks?
So America is a coastal nation. I mean, I live here along the coast, but you know, there's also people that live in Arkansas or Iowa. So when we say we are a coastal nation, even though the majority of our country is far from the ocean, what does that mean, Holly?
Sure. There's a strong connection. I mean, you're right. It only affects a component of the U.S., but we're all interconnected, either through rivers and estuaries. But what happens on the coast truly affects the rest of the country, and that's what we mean by a coastal nation. And I'll give you a perfect example. When Katrina hit, we saw gas prices across the country go up by 75 cents a gallon. Everybody paid more in their gas prices when something happened in the Gulf. And something more personal to me, when Sandy hit, I was in Maryland. I didn't get directly impacted by Sandy, but I'm a Prime member on Amazon. I have 2 little boys. It happened in the end of October, and I wanted to get my Christmas presents early. And Prime, you get 2 days on shipping, and I got notifications I'm not going to get these gifts until 14 days. Luckily, I had a lot of time because I'm a Type A personality, but it shows you that the reliability, goods and services coming in out of the port of New York, New Jersey were impacted. The goods making its way off the ship, onto the rails, onto the trucks, into Walmart, and the Amazon distribution stations were impacted. Reliability was impacted. And so that is what we mean by a coastal nation. Things that happen on the coast have a strong impact on what's happening interior.
So, Lauren, can you tell us what the word resilient means specifically?
Sure. So at the National Academy of Sciences, we think of resilience as being the immune system of a community. You know, how healthy are you to be able to prepare for something to happen, withstand it when it hits, if you get sick or something, recover, and then adapt for the next thing to come. And so when you think about that in terms of a community, there's a lot of things that can be done ahead of time, as well as some of the response and emergency management elements in the aftermath.
So you were talking about a little bit about the Roundtable program, the Resilient America Roundtable program. How old is the program? Where did its creation come from?
Yeah, it's a baby. It's just a baby. We launched in
new immune system
with a really good immune system. We launched in January 2014, and it came out of a report actually that the National Academy of Sciences produced in 2012, and the report was called Disaster Resilience: A National Imperative. Now, when this report came out, and it was unusual because 10 federal agencies co-sponsored this report, and that does not happen voluntarily too often. So the agencies came together, we distributed the report, and we got all this feedback saying, can you help us with this? What does this really mean? If we understand resilience here, what does it mean here? How do we implement this? And so in that request, the Resilient America program was born, and we took some of the basic ideas of resilience from the report. How do you understand and communicate your risk? How do you measure resilience? How do you know you're moving in the right direction? Who's involved? This is where it's everyone, from the federal agencies down to the homeowner. And share what you know, because a lot of people are very interested in reducing these costs that Holly was talking about. We don't want to see that curve continue to rise. So we took those 4 basic ideas, and we're working in 3 or 4 different pilot communities around the country to see how it really plays in real world. We live in Washington. It's a different place here. So to take these policy concepts and to say, what does this look like in Charleston, South Carolina, or Seattle, Washington, or Cedar Rapids, Iowa? And we're getting a really good sense of what information is needed to go into local decision making, and how that decision making can impact the resilience of a community.
So who are the types of people that sit on the roundtable?
Oh, we have brilliant, wonderful people. So we have, we do, like Holly. We have a mix of federal agency representatives, so people from FEMA, DHS, NOAA, USGS, others too, who they provide some of the financial support and other support too, which I can tell you about. We bring in academics, so people who are really thinking and doing research on this to keep the research and evidence base strong. And we bring in practitioners, private sector, foundations, so really people who are demonstrated as having an interest and an ability to affect change.
These roundtables are key because the last 30 years there was an economic analysis done, and within the federal government we have spent 15 times more on responding to an incident than we do in preparing for one. And we really need to turn those numbers around, because FEMA has showed for every dollar you spend on preparing, you save $4 in terms of the recovery. And so what we really want to do is, from a NOAA perspective, is provide the information, the data, the environmental intelligence, so communities in the roundtables, part of this, can have the information to make better decisions, understand their risk, and then put practices, policies, and programs in place to make them more resilient in sight of these risks that they have in front of them.
Great. So far, what has been the community response to the roundtables?
It's been really positive.
Yeah.
And so we picked 3 for right now. We might have a 4th one coming on. And when we go into the communities, we connect with the community organizations, the American Red Cross, Points of Light, NAACP, organizations like that that really work with the people. We connect with the federal agencies that are local, right? And we connect with the city government, the county government, private sector, just everyone who's involved or interested, rather. And when we bring them together, it's like we light a match, we light a spark. They want to talk about these issues, they want to get a better understanding of these issues, but sometimes they just need a little push to bring them together. And so that's what we do in the communities. It's really nice to have the federal partners there because in addition, the second type of resources they really provide are data, information. You know, we say in Charleston, it's a coastal city. Can you show us the flood risk? And NOAA says, here's what it looks like. Or we say to DHS, you know, there's a port here. What does this mean for economic supply in the supply chains? They say, we can help you with this. So, you know, there are partners really in shoulder deep with us because it's not always easy for the federal agencies to connect at the community level. So this is a forum for that to happen.
Wonderful. So in addition to Resilient America, can you also share some other examples of climate resiliency hubs?
Absolutely. So we have been working in a very much a community approach. The government, as Lauren said, is one piece of the puzzle. We have been working with philanthropic organizations like Rockefeller and Bloomberg. They have strong initiatives out there looking at 100 resilient cities and C40 cities. Those are programs that they are supporting to provide information, provide resources to cities to be more resilient, to plan for these risks and to be able to recover from those risks. We've been working with the Wharton Center, the Wharton School of Risk, working with other federal agencies. Many of the partners that are here today at CHOW. A lot of our partners from the Coastal States organizations, NEARS, the Sanctuaries Foundation, many others are working with us through these resilient initiatives. They're across the country. They're not just coastal. They're inland because we have wildfire, there's flooding, there's a lot of other risks, there's drought. So all these things are being taken into consideration in these cities across the country. Number of organizations are coming together. But I have to say one of the other big targets that we want to communicate with are businesses. Businesses really are starting to consider not just the insurance and reinsurance industry, but all businesses are starting to consider climate risk associated with their supply chain, associated with their infrastructure, and looking at using natural capital, that's natural system, wetlands and other things, to protect their infrastructure and or use it for carbon sequestration. So we're really seeing a change in not only the communities, as you think of the federal and state and local and county and academics, but also the businesses really using natural systems, using resilient practices to sustain the resources as well as sustain their economy.
With a variety of the different types of climate initiatives that you were just discussing, is there an effort to coordinate between the efforts that are going on? Because oftentimes, you know, people fighting for people, if you know what I mean. How are they working together to get the public engagement?
They're all, honestly, when I attend, and same with Lauren, we attend different groups. We tend to sometimes run in the same circles and see the same people. So the efforts that the Academies is putting on is an example of bringing the right people to the table. For example, we're going to be, or the roundtable is going to be holding a meeting with the reinsurance industry, and we're going to have a 2-3 day event. We're going to bring the right people to the table. We're going to talk about risk. We're going to talk about uncertainty. We're going to talk about what data are needed to understand that and what kind of policies and practices can we put in place. And that's a way to bring people together. Also, events like CHOW. We're going to have a number of people here that we talk in the margins about resilience.
I think that the other piece in terms of this competition, it doesn't feel competitive in this space, even though it might sound that way, because one of the very interesting and kind of cool things about this resilience movement is that it's kind of all happening at the same time. So you have things popping up in different places doing similar sounding things, and it actually acts more like a catalyst, and it acts more like an amplifier.
Yeah.
And so when Rockefeller says we have $100 million for cities to be more resilient, people actually listen. You know, they say $100 million, that must mean something. And that helps all the other programs, you know, get positioned and to advance what Rockefeller's doing, for us to advance what we're doing. So it really works more collectively than competitively.
So obviously then you just mentioned how well we're trying to work together on these things, but how do we work as a nation more broadly to be more resilient? And then I'm going to take it even a step further.
Sure.
I mean, because obviously, you know, the ocean is completely interconnected, one ocean. So how do we as a globe work more closely together to try to fix these issues?
Yeah, so from a federal perspective, we do a couple things. Obviously, NOAA is very proud this year that we have a resilience program. We have 2 grant programs out there totaling $9 million that are going out to communities for resiliency grants. So people are applying now. We just had a webinar communicating the grants that we're putting out there. We had over 400 people attend that webinar. So there's clearly a need for the resources to spark some of these activities and these plans and policies that people are putting into place. What that does is it galvanizes those communities to start to work together. So from a coastal perspective, we're seeing a lot of information exchange. We're seeing a lot of lessons learned that can be transferred from city to city. So and also internationally. I just came back from Japan a couple months ago. I actually saw the impacts of the tsunami. I was in Fukushima, met with communities. I learned a tremendous amount talking to the communities that were impacted. Met a gentleman who lost his grandmother and talked about how he doesn't still want to be separate from the ocean, that they want to put up a 25-foot seawall between his village and the ocean. And even though he was completely devastated, he does not want to see that happen because he wants to live sustainably, live with the oceans in a better way. And so the community is really coming together, thinking about resilient practices, how natural systems might be a better buffer than concrete, or maybe a mixed approach. But the important part is there's these opportunities for the nations to get together globally to have this conversation and take the lessons from each country and start to apply them across the globe.
I think that nations actually have aligned interests in being resilient, right? So the Fukushima disaster in 2011 halted production in Smyrna, Tennessee on the Nissan and Toyota paint lines, right? So we live in a global environment, and so the interest for Japan to stay resilient is the interest for the United States to be resilient, is the interest of Europe to be resilient, because these economic supply chains, these interdependencies they're very complicated, they're layered, but they're also pretty fragile. So part of the resilience message, once it's nested. It's the same message at the community level, as the state level, at the national level, at the global level. If you understand your community's interdependencies, what the key nodes would be that bring everything to a crashing halt, and what the key nodes are that are amplifiers or dampeners, right, that can make things keep going, then you can understand how do you act to get resilient. What do you need to do to protect those nodes or to avoid the other ones? So these issues are quite universal, I think.
Yeah, as a scientist, I love facts, so I have one statistic that feeds into that, but 1 out of every 10 cars that's manufactured in the United States is sold in China. So we are a global nation, pretty much.
Completely. So what is the best way to get communities involved, and while we still have the ability to make more effective decisions, while these disasters, I hate to say it that way, but we're walking into hurricane season right now, and it seems like, at least with the United States, action only happens when a disaster happens.
Right.
And it just gives me goosebumps thinking about that. And so what are these things that we can do to get communities involved now to mitigate what's going on?
I find that the communities are thinking about that anyway. The local elected officials, the city managers, the county officials, they're thinking about the public health and safety of their citizens every single day. And whether it's, do we invest in stormwater, sewage systems, do we invest in levee systems, they're thinking about this. And so I think that it goes back to the alignment of interest. What is the interest of the community? When you start talking about disasters, people start to think, won't FEMA come in and take care of it? But if you think about other disruptions, or what's really the priority of this community, is it the fact that we're a huge tourist hub and we have to keep the power on even in hurricane season because that's when everyone comes to the beach, right? I mean, when you start to align the interests along those lines, then you start to get the communities thinking about, we always want to be up and running, or up and growing, or up and coming. And with that narrative, the resilience piece fits into that, because they can't be all those things if they are fragile or vulnerable.
One word: preparedness. Let's get away from responding so much and start putting money into preparedness.
Right. So one last question. How do we reach Middle America? How do we get Middle America just as inspired to want to be resilient as people that live along the coast.
I don't think that's I don't think that's a hard.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a big lift. I think that
droughts, wildfires, they're there.
Droughts,
Tornadoes.
wildfires.
They're there.
You know, everyone loves where they live. You know, everyone wants their home, their family to be safe, and everyone wants to live in a place that's economically vibrant, right? So when we go around the country, and we started the discussion about disasters. Everyone was like, can we talk about economic resilience and vulnerable populations? So people are thinking about that. I think that for the Middle America, places that you are not maybe focused on immediately, they are reaching out to us too. Like when we have a webinar on our meetings or report, we get downloads from every single state in the country, right? And 80 countries, you know what I mean? So these interests really do resonate. So it's as much about reaching out as it is to listen when they reach to us.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And your roundtables seem like they're just the beginning to get us all talking.
There you go.
And to make change happen. And thank you, ladies, so much for joining me today in the studio. It's been a great conversation on what we can do to help change. So
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot.
Thank you for
Enjoy
highlighting
the rest
this.
of Chow.
Thank
Yay. So we are going to now go on, and America really is a coastal nation, as Holly said, and we have to look at how we can confront the effects of climate change happening today and not just in the future. So up next, we return to Chow for the conclusion of day one with a panel on taking the helm, chairing the Arctic Council, because the Arctic's just as much part of this conversation as everything else we were just discussing just now. So, and tonight we get dressed in our finest and attend the 2015 Ocean Awards Gala presented by the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. Also known as the Ocean Prom, the foundation honors President and Mrs. George W. Bush with the Leadership Award. Follow the gala on Twitter with #OceanProm and stay tuned for a recap of the Ocean Prom Wednesday morning on Capitol Hill Ocean Talk. We'll see you tomorrow on oceanslive.org for the second day of Chow. Thank you so much for watching.